A millionaire decides to visit a luxury spa to relax alongside his new girlfriend, seeking peace and comfort, but is shocked to discover that his ex-wife works there as a massage therapist, and that she will be the one attending to him. As he lies there in silence, he can't help but think about everything they went through together, what they lost, and what might still remain between them. What he does next leaves everyone completely stunned. Snow-capped peaks pierce the Colorado sky like ancient guardians, their jagged silhouettes stark against the pristine winter backdrop. The ethereal summit spa, a marvel of glass and stone architecture, nestled among these giants like a crystal palace, its windows reflecting the golden afternoon light. Inside, Daniel Carter stood at the panoramic window of his presidential suite, a tumbler of single malt whiskey warming in his hand. At 52, Daniel carried his success like a tailored suit, impeccably and with practiced ease. His salt and pepper, hair and sharp features spoke of both authority and refinement, qualities that had served him well in building his technology empire. Yet today, something felt off. The usual satisfaction of having everything under control eluded him, replaced by an unfamiliar restlessness. Victoria Lang, his companion of 3 years, reclined on the suite's plush sofa, her elegant figure a study in calculated perfection. She was reviewing their itinerary for the week-long retreat, a carefully curated schedule of exclusive treatments, private yoga sessions, and gourmet dining experiences. Her presence in his life was much like her current activity, meticulous, organized, and somehow both intimate and businesslike. "Darling," she called out, her voice carrying the polished tone of someone accustomed to being heard, "I've arranged for Marcus, that wonderful massage therapist from Switzerland, to see you tomorrow morning. He's usually booked months in advance." But she let the sentence trail off, a subtle reminder of her influence. Daniel nodded absently, his attention caught by a young couple walking along the snow-covered path below. They were laughing, their breath visible in the cold air, their joy unrestrained by pretense. Something about their genuine connection made his chest tighten unexpectedly. "Daniel?" Victoria's voice carried a note of concern. Or was it control? "Is everything all right?" He turned from the window, offering her the smile he'd perfected in countless board meetings. "Just tired from the flight," he replied, though the private jet had been as smooth as ever. "I think I'll take a walk before dinner." Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched slightly. "In this weather? The restaurant requires formal attire, and you'll need time to change." But Daniel was already reaching for his cashmere coat. The suite, despite its 2,000 square feet of luxury, suddenly felt suffocating. He needed air, space, something real, to ground him in this temple of artificial perfection. As he stepped into the corridor, his phone buzzed with an email about a pending acquisition. Normally, such matters energized him, but today the zeros in the figure only reminded him of emptiness. When had success started feeling so hollow? What Daniel didn't know, couldn't know, was that fate had orchestrated this retreat with savage irony. In less than 24 hours, his carefully constructed world would begin to unravel, starting with a chance encounter that would force him to confront the one thing all his money couldn't buy: the truth about his past. The massage room at Ethereal Summit Spa was designed to embody tranquility, walls of natural stone, the gentle sound of water trickling over crystals, and the subtle scent of lavender hanging in the air. Daniel lay face down on the heated table, attempting to surrender to the promised relaxation, but peace eluded him, much like sleep had the night before. Victoria had insisted on this particular time slot, claiming it was the only opening with their preferred therapist. Daniel had acquiesced, as he often did these days, to avoid the subtle power plays that seemed to characterize their relationship. The door opened softly, and he heard someone enter. "Good morning, Mr. Carter. I'm covering for Marcus today. I hope that's all right." The voice struck him like an electrical current, soft, melodious, achingly familiar. His muscles tensed involuntarily. It couldn't be. He started to turn his head. "Please try to stay relaxed," the voice continued professionally, though he detected a slight tremor in it now. "I'll be using Swedish techniques today, Rachel." After 5 years, the sound of her voice still had the power to unravel him completely. His mind raced through 1,000 questions. What was she doing here, working as a massage therapist? She had been a successful art curator when they were married, her gallery one of the most prestigious in Denver. Cool hands touched his shoulders, and memories flooded back unbidden. Sunday mornings in their downtown loft, Rachel's fingers absently tracing patterns on his back as they planned their future. The way she used to rest her head between his shoulder blades when embracing him from behind. The sound of her laughter, echoing through their home. The hands working on his muscles were entirely professional now, but each touch seemed to burn through the layers of carefully constructed detachment he'd built over the years. Then he noticed something else, the slight protrusion of her belly as she moved around the table. Rachel was pregnant. The realization hit him with physical force. He had left her because he thought he couldn't give her this very thing, a child, a family, the future she'd always dreamed of. The fraudulent medical report that had shattered his world lay buried in his office safe, a cruel reminder of why he'd walked away without explanation. "Your shoulders are carrying a lot of tension," Rachel observed clinically, though her voice wasn't quite steady. "Try to breathe deeply." Daniel followed her instruction automatically, but his mind was in chaos. Questions multiplied like fractals. Who was the father? Was she happy? Did she ever think of him? And beneath it all, the crushing weight of his own cowardice, the realization that he had destroyed their marriage based on a lie he'd never even given her the chance to help him face. The session continued in loaded silence, each minute an exquisite torture of professional touch and personal history. Through the face rest, Daniel caught glimpses of Rachel's sensible shoes moving around the table, so different from the designer heels she used to wear. Her transformation from the woman he'd known to this new person, carrying another man's child and living a completely different life, felt like a physical ache in his chest. When the session finally ended, Rachel's voice was composed but distant. "Take your time getting up, Mr. Carter. There's water on the side table." He wanted to say something, anything, but what right did he have? He had been the one to leave, to disappear without explanation, to let her believe whatever she needed to believe about his abandonment. The door closed softly behind her, leaving Daniel alone with the weight of his choices and the sudden devastating awareness that the peaceful retreat he'd planned had just become the epicenter of his personal earthquake. Victoria Lang prided herself on control. Her suite at the ethereal Summit Spa was a testament to this, everything arranged with military precision, from the alignment of her laptop on the mahogany desk to the carefully curated selection of designer outfits in the closet. But now, watching Daniel return from his massage session, she sensed something had shifted beyond her carefully maintained boundaries. He entered their suite like a man underwater, movements slow and distracted. The sharp business instincts that had helped Victoria build her consulting empire triggered immediate alarm bells. She knew every micro-expression of Daniel Carter's face, had studied them like a science over the 3 years they'd been together. This particular look was new. "How was the session?" she asked, keeping her tone light while her mind raced through possibilities. "I hope the replacement therapist was adequate." Daniel's pause before answering was microscopic, but to Victoria, it might as well have been a scream. "Fine," he said, moving to the bar. "Just fine." Victoria watched him pour a mineral water, not his usual scotch. Another red flag. She pulled out her tablet, ostensibly reviewing their dinner reservations while actually opening a discreet message to the spa's manager. Within minutes, she had her answer, and the name sent ice through her veins. Rachel Morrison Carter. The irony was almost painful. After all these years of careful maneuvering, of protecting her investment in this relationship, the past had walked right through the front door. Victoria remembered clearly the day she'd arranged for that falsified medical report. It had been almost too easy. A desperate doctor with gambling debts, a perfectly crafted story about Daniel's infertility, and the right amount of money in the right offshore account. "Daniel," she said carefully, "perhaps we should consider moving to another spa. I've heard wonderful things about that new place in Aspen." He turned from the window, and something in his eyes made her stomach clench. "Why would we do that?" "The altitude here doesn't agree with me," she lied smoothly, "and the service isn't quite what was promised." "The service seems perfectly authentic to me," he replied, and the edge in his voice told Victoria everything she needed to know. He'd recognized Rachel. Victoria moved to him, her silk robe whispering across the floor. She placed a manicured hand on his arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. "Darling, you seem stressed. Why don't we have dinner in the suite tonight? Just the two of us?" But Daniel was already shrugging off her touch. "I need some air. Don't wait up for dinner." After he left, Victoria stood at the same window where he'd been standing, her reflection a study in contained fury. She pulled out her phone again, this time dialing a different number. "James, I need you to do some discreet research. Rachel Morrison Carter. She's working at the Ethereal Summit Spa in Colorado. I want to know everything, especially about her pregnancy." As she ended the call, Victoria noticed a small imperfection in her manicure, a tiny chip in the deep red polish. She stared at it, reminded of how quickly perfection could be marred by a single flaw. She'd worked too hard, planned too carefully, to let Rachel's unexpected appearance destroy everything now. Outside, snow was beginning to fall again, thick flakes swirling against the darkening sky. Victoria watched them, reminded of how easily patterns could shift, how chaos could emerge from order, but she hadn't maintained her position in life by allowing chaos to win. If Rachel's presence threatened what she'd built with Daniel, then Rachel would have to be dealt with again. Victoria opened her laptop, fingers hovering over the keys. She had files, carefully preserved documentation of every step of her past manipulation. Insurance, she'd called it then. Now, she realized, it might prove useful in ways she hadn't anticipated. The question was, how best to deploy this information without revealing her own role in the deception. A plan began to form in her mind, elegant in its simplicity. Sometimes the best way to handle a threat was to let it destroy itself. All she needed to do was plant the right seeds of doubt, and nature would take its course. Rachel's small staff apartment at the edge of the spa complex was a far cry from the luxury suites where she once stayed as a guest. But as she sat in her worn armchair, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of pink and gold, she felt a peace that had eluded her in her previous life of gallery openings and charity galas. Her hand rested on her swollen belly, feeling the gentle movements of her child, a miracle she'd given up hoping for during her marriage to Daniel. The irony wasn't lost on her. Now, working as a massage therapist at a luxury spa, making barely enough to get by, she was finally experiencing the one thing she'd wanted most when she had everything else. "Just you and me, little one," she whispered, a habit she'd developed over the past 7 months. The father, a kind artist she'd dated briefly, had moved to Europe for a prestigious commission before she discovered she was pregnant. She'd chosen not to tell him, knowing his career was taking off and feeling, for the first time in her life, capable of handling things on her own. But seeing Daniel today had shaken her carefully constructed equilibrium. He looked exactly the same. Perhaps a few more strands of silver in his hair, a few more lines around his eyes, but still the man who had once been the center of her world. The man who had disappeared without explanation, leaving her to peace. Together a new life from the shattered remains of their marriage. Rachel stood up, moving to the small kitchenette to make her evening tea. Her tiny apartment, with its second-hand furniture and walls decorated with her own photographs, represented everything she'd learned about survival and reinvention. After Daniel left, she'd sold the gallery, unable to bear the pitying looks from Denver's elite social circle. She'd taken photography classes, rediscovering her love of art from behind the lens rather than as a curator. When the spa job opened up, it had seemed like fate, a chance to use her hands to help others while living in a place of natural beauty. A knock at her door startled her from her reverie. Through the peephole, she saw Mrs. Henderson, the spa's elderly head of staff scheduling. "Rachel, dear," Mrs. Henderson said when she opened the door, "I'm so sorry, but there's been a complaint from Suite 401. Rachel's heart sank. Suite 401, Victoria Lang's suite, of course. "Ms. Lang has requested that you be removed from her partner's service rotation," Mrs. Henderson continued, her kind face troubled. "I know you're one of our best therapists, but given her influence—" "I understand," Rachel said quietly. "It's fine, really. I prefer working with the regular guests anyway." After Mrs. Henderson left, Rachel returned to her tea, now gone lukewarm. She pulled out an old shoebox from under her bed, her own private archive of the past. Inside lay the unopened letter from Daniel, discovered months after he left. Buried in a book she couldn't bring herself to read, she'd carried it through 3 moves, never finding the courage to break its seal. Tonight, something felt different. Perhaps it was the hormones, or perhaps it was seeing Daniel again, but she found herself tracing the edges of the envelope with trembling fingers. The paper had yellowed slightly with age, but his handwriting remained as familiar as her own. Reflection. A swift kick from the baby made her smile despite her tears. "You're right," she murmured. "Maybe it's time we both faced some truths." But as she began to tear open the envelope, another knock echoed through her small apartment. This one more commanding, more insistent. Through the peephole, she saw Victoria Lang herself, perfectly coiffed and radiating cold authority. Rachel's hand tightened on the letter, crumpling its edge slightly. After 5 years of rebuilding herself, of finding strength in simplicity, she was about to face the woman who had so seamlessly stepped into her former life. The question was, would she face her as the broken woman she'd been, or as the person she'd become? Rachel opened the door with deliberate slowness, holding it just wide enough to face Victoria without inviting her in. The contrast between them was stark. Victoria in her designer loungewear and Rachel in simple cotton maternity clothes. But it was Rachel's steady gaze that momentarily threw Victoria off balance. "Ms. Lang," Rachel said evenly, "this is unexpected." Victoria's practiced smile didn't reach her eyes. "Rachel, darling, may I come in? What I have to say shouldn't be discussed in hallways." After a moment's hesitation, Rachel stepped aside. Victoria entered the small apartment, her assessment of the modest space evident in her swift glance around. The room. She remained standing, making the room feel suddenly cramped with her presence. "I'll be direct," Victoria said, her voice carrying the smooth confidence of someone accustomed to controlling conversations. "Your presence here is unfortunate. I'm sure you understand why." Rachel moved to her kitchenette, deliberately taking her time to pour a second cup of tea. "Actually, I don't. I work here, Victoria. This is my job." "Come now." Victoria's laugh was silk over steel. "Surely you don't expect me to believe this is coincidence. Working at the exact spa where Daniel and I frequently stay." Rachel placed the tea on her small table, settling carefully into her chair. "Believe what you want. I'm not in the habit of justifying my choices to anyone anymore. Victoria's composure flickered. She hadn't expected this version of Rachel. Calm, grounded, unintimidated. Let me be clearer then. Daniel has moved. And we're happy. Whatever game you're playing, game, Rachel interrupted, her hand instinctively moving to protect her belly. Is that what you think this is? Because from where I'm sitting, you're the one who showed up at my door, trying to intimidate me in my own home. Victoria's eyes narrowed at the gesture. The pregnancy. How convenient. Tell me, does Daniel know yet? Or were you planning a dramatic revelation? My child has nothing to do with Daniel, Rachel said firmly, though her heart raced at keeping this half-truth, and nothing to do with you. Everything about you has to do with me, Victoria snapped, her polished facade cracking. I've spent years building my life with Daniel. I won't let you destroy that with some manufactured drama about... Stop! Rachel stood up, her voice quiet but commanding. You didn't build anything, Victoria. You orchestrated. You manipulated. You played games. I may not know exactly what you did 5 years ago, but I know enough about who you are to recognize your handiwork. Victoria stepped closer, her perfume overwhelming in the small space. Be very careful, Rachel. You have no idea what I'm capable of. Actually, I do. Rachel moved to her desk, picking up the unopened letter. And that's why I've kept this all these years. Insurance, you might say. Your kind of people understand that concept, don't they? Victoria's eyes fixed on the envelope, recognition flickering across her features. What is that? Something Daniel wrote the day he left. I never read it, but maybe now's the time, unless, of course, you know what's in it. The two women stood in tense silence, the weight of unspoken threats hanging between them. Outside, the wind had picked up, rattling the windows of Rachel's apartment. The mountains that had seemed so peaceful earlier now loomed dark and foreboding through the glass. Finally, Victoria adjusted her cashmere wrap, recovering her composure. Well, this has been illuminating. Do enjoy your evening, Rachel. And do be careful on these mountain roads. I hear they can be quite treacherous, especially in your condition. After Victoria left, Rachel sank into her chair, hands trembling as she held the letter. She hadn't known for certain that Victoria had been involved in her marriage's destruction, but the other woman's reaction to the letter had confirmed her suspicions. The question now was, what secrets did these pages hold, and was she finally ready to face them? Daniel sat in his private office suite at the spa, the mountain darkness pressing against the windows. His laptop screen cast a blue glow across his face as he dug through encrypted files he hadn't opened in years. The sight of Rachel today, proud, professional, and pregnant, had awakened something in him, not just memories, but doubts. He pulled up the medical report that had destroyed his life 5 years ago. Dr. Marcus Werner's signature stood bold at the bottom, declaring with clinical finality that Daniel would never father children. He remembered reading it in this very spa during another retreat. Victoria had been there then too, offering comfort, with perfect timing, too perfect perhaps. Daniel opened a secure browser and began searching. Dr. Werner had disappeared from the medical community shortly after issuing that report. His prestigious Denver practice had been sold, his house liquidated. The timing nagged at Daniel's instincts, the same instincts that had built his technology empire. Computer problems, darling. Daniel didn't startle at Victoria's voice. Years of boardroom battles had taught him better. He calmly closed the laptop, just checking some work emails. Victoria glided into the room, but something was off about her usual elegant demeanor. A certain tightness around her eyes. Perhaps. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her grip slightly firmer than usual. You've been distracted since the massage session. Have I? Daniel stood, moving to the wet bar. How was your evening? Productive. I had a fascinating conversation with one of the staff. Victoria watched him pour his drink. About proper, professional boundaries. The crystal tumbler paused halfway to Daniel's lips. What did you do? Protected our interests, of course. Victoria's smile was practiced perfection. That's what I've always done for us, Daniel, even before there was an us. Something in her tone made Daniel's neck prickle. He set down his drink, untouched. I need some air. In this weather? Daniel, be reasonable. But he was already heading for the door, his mind racing. He pulled out his phone, connecting to his most trusted private investigator. Jake, I need everything you can find on Dr. Marcus Werner, formerly of Denver. Focus on financial transactions from 5 years ago. And Jake, I need it tonight. The spa's corridors were quiet at this hour. Daniel found himself walking toward the staff section, though he knew Rachel's apartment location was restricted information. As he passed the administration office, a familiar name on a filing cabinet caught his eye through the glass door. Personnel records, Morrison Carter, R. The door was locked, but Daniel hadn't built his empire by accepting closed doors. The electronic lock yielded easily to his universal keycard emulator, a questionably legal device that had proved invaluable in corporate takeovers. Inside, he found Rachel's file quickly. Employment history, references, medical insurance. His hands froze on a document. It was a copy of Rachel's latest prenatal checkup, dated 3 weeks ago. 28 weeks pregnant. He did the math quickly, his heart pounding. The timing aligned perfectly with their last encounter. A chance meeting at their old favorite restaurant in Denver, a night of shared memories and unspoken regrets, a final goodbye that had felt more like a beginning. His phone buzzed. Jake's preliminary report filled the screen. Dr. Werner's offshore account had received a substantial deposit 5 years ago, traced back through a complex series of shells to Victoria's private foundation. Daniel sank into the office chair, the weight of understanding crushing his chest. The infertility diagnosis had been fake. Victoria had orchestrated everything. His separation from Rachel, his belief that he couldn't father children, probably even that last bittersweet encounter in Denver, and now Rachel was carrying what could very well be his child. A noise in the hallway snapped him to attention. He quickly replaced the file and slipped out of the office, his mind whirling with implications. The question wasn't just what to do with this information, but how to protect Rachel from Victoria's inevitable reaction when everything unraveled. As if in answer, his phone buzzed again. An alert from his building's security system in Denver. Someone had accessed his private safe room 20 minutes ago. Only 2 people had that code, himself and Victoria. The medical report. She was cleaning up her tracks. But Victoria had made one crucial mistake. She didn't know about his safe room's hidden camera. As the security footage loaded on his phone, Daniel's jaw tightened. The game was about to change, and this time he would make sure Rachel knew the whole truth. The letter sat on Rachel's small desk like a live wire, its edges illuminated by her reading lamp. Outside, the wind had grown stronger, making the old windows creak and whisper. She'd changed into her most comfortable sweater, an oversized cream-colored cashmere, the last remnant of her previous life, and made a fresh cup of chamomile tea. Whatever's in this letter, she spoke softly to her unborn child. We face it together. The baby responded with a gentle kick, as if in agreement. Rachel's hands trembled slightly as she finally broke the seal. The paper inside was expensive stationery. She recognized it from Daniel's old home office. His handwriting, usually so controlled and precise, showed signs of emotional distress. Some words were crossed out. Others written with such force they had nearly torn the paper. My dearest Rachel, by the time you read this, if you read this, I'll be gone. The coward's way out, I know. You deserve better. You deserve everything, and that's precisely why I have to leave. Today I received news that shattered my world. medical results that confirm what I've suspected since. We started trying for a family. I can't give you children. The doctor was clear. There's no hope, no treatment, no future where I can give you what you've always dreamed of. I see you every morning, the way you look at children in the park, how your eyes linger on the nursery we plan to decorate. You were born to be a mother, Rachel. Your capacity for love, your gentle strength, these gifts shouldn't be wasted on a man who can't give you a family. I considered telling you the truth, letting you make your own choice. But I know you, my love. You would choose to stay, to sacrifice your dreams for me. You would say we could adopt, or that our love is enough. And for a while, maybe it would be. But I've watched my mother live with that same sacrifice. The quiet regret that grows like a shadow over the years. I won't do that to you. There's something else. Something I can barely bring myself to write. Dr. Werner suggested a donor program, but the thought of raising a child that wasn't mine, watching you love them in a way I never could, the jealousy and inadequacy would poison everything. I'm not strong enough, Rachel, not noble enough to give you that freedom while staying by your side. Victoria Lang has offered to help me transition the company's European operations. I'll be gone by morning. Please don't try to find me. Please don't hate me, though you have every right to. Instead, hate my weakness, my inability to face you with the truth. Know that I love you more than my next breath. That leaving you is the hardest thing I've ever done. That every future I imagined had you in it, until biology made a mockery of our dreams. Find someone who can give you everything. Have beautiful children. Live the life you deserve. Forever yours, Daniel. P.S. I've left everything in your name. Don't fight it. It's the least I can do, though it feels like nothing compared to what I'm taking from you. Rachel set the letter down, tears flowing freely now. All these years, she'd imagined every possible scenario, affairs, midlife crises, hidden bankruptcies. But this spoke of a pain so profound, a love so misguided in its sacrifice, that it broke her heart all over again. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the strong movements of the child within. The irony was almost too much to bear. Here she was, pregnant, while the man who'd left her because he thought he couldn't have children was just rooms away. A sudden suspicion seized her. The timing of the diagnosis, Victoria's convenient presence, her reaction to the letter earlier. Today, Rachel pulled out her phone and began searching for Dr. Werner. What she found, or rather didn't find, made her blood run cold. The doctor had vanished from the medical community shortly after Daniel's diagnosis. His practice had been sold, his credentials surrendered. But before that, he'd had a reputation for gambling debts and ethical violations. Rachel stood up, swaying slightly as the pieces fell into place. Victoria hadn't just stepped into her life after Daniel left, she'd engineered the entire separation. And now, carrying what could only be Daniel's child from their chance encounter in Denver, Rachel held the power to unravel everything Victoria had built. Thunder rolled across the mountains as Rachel made her decision. She'd spent 5 years running from the past. Now it was time to run toward the truth, no matter the cost. The weather forecast had predicted a mild snowstorm, but the meteorologists had underestimated the fury gathering in the Colorado mountains. Wind howled through the spa's eastern corridor as Rachel made her way toward the main building, Daniel's letter safely tucked in her coat pocket. Emergency lights cast long shadows on the walls, their backup generators humming beneath the storm's symphony. She needed to find Daniel, to show him the evidence of Victoria's manipulation. But the spa was a maze of luxury and shadows at this hour, and her usual staff access card wouldn't open the executive wings. As she rounded a corner, she nearly collided with someone hurrying in the opposite direction. Rachel. Daniel reached out to steady her, his hands gentle but quickly withdrawn. In the emergency lighting, his face looked haunted. "I was coming to find you." "I need to tell you something," they said simultaneously. A violent gust rattled the windows, making them both jump. Rachel instinctively placed a hand on her belly, a gesture that didn't escape Daniel's notice. His eyes softened with a pain that made her heart ache. "The maintenance office," Rachel said, making a quick decision. "It's nearby and private. We need to talk." The small office was cluttered with tools and monitors showing the spa's various systems. Weather alerts flashed red on one screen. The storm was intensifying, roads already becoming impassable. Rachel found the light switch, but nothing happened. "Power's out in this section," Daniel explained, pulling out his phone to provide light. "Main building's running on generators, but these outlying areas—" He trailed off, distracted by a security alert on his screen. "Victoria just tried to access my private servers in Denver." "She's destroying evidence," Rachel said, pulling out the letter. "Like she destroyed us 5 years ago." Daniel's face changed as he recognized the envelope. "You kept it? All this time?" "I never read it. Until tonight." Rachel's voice caught. "Daniel, about the medical report. It was fake." His voice was tight with controlled anger. "I know. I just found proof that Victoria bribed Dr. Werner. She orchestrated everything, the diagnosis, the timing, probably even arranged to be there when I got the news." Thunder crashed overhead as Rachel absorbed this confirmation of her suspicions. The wind found new cracks to whistle through, creating an eerie backdrop to their revelations. "There's more," Rachel said softly. Her hand moved to her belly again, but this time with purpose. "That night in Denver, 3 months ago," Daniel's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "The baby is yours." Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't know how to tell you, especially with Victoria." The lights flickered briefly as the building's secondary generator kicked in, illuminating Daniel's stunned face. He took a step toward her, then stopped, years of restraint warring. With sudden hope, "I'm having a child," he said, his voice raw. "We're having—" A crash from the corridor interrupted him. Victoria's voice carried through the door, sharp with authority. "Daniel, security said they saw you come this way. We need to talk about the server access. Now." Rachel and Daniel froze, caught in their moment of truth as Victoria's heels clicked. Closer. The maintenance office had only one door. They were trapped. But Daniel's face had changed. Gone was the confusion and pain, replaced by a cold determination Rachel remembered from their early days when he was building his company against all odds. He moved to stand between her and the door, his decision made. "Enough running," he said quietly. "Enough manipulation. It's time we all faced the truth." The door handle turned, and Rachel felt the baby kick, as if sensing the approaching confrontation. Outside, the storm reached new heights of fury, nature itself seeming to mirror the emotional tempest about to break loose in this small mountain. Refuge. Victoria Lang had orchestrated countless corporate takeovers, but nothing had prepared her for the scene that greeted her when she opened the maintenance office door. Daniel and Rachel stood together in the dim emergency lighting, their faces illuminated by the flickering glow of security monitors. The intimacy of their stance told her everything she needed to know. "Well," she said, her voice arctic, "isn't this cozy?" "It's over, Victoria." Daniel's voice carried the same tone he used in hostile boardroom negotiations. "I know about Dr. Werner, the bribe, the fake diagnosis, all of it." Victoria's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Proof? Or just convenient accusations from your pregnant ex-wife?" "I have the offshore transaction records," Daniel said, holding up his phone, "and security footage of you accessing my safe room tonight. Destroying evidence doesn't erase what you did." A particularly violent gust of wind rattled the windows, making the emergency lights flicker. Rachel stepped forward, one hand protectively over her belly, the other clutching Daniel's letter. "You knew about this," Rachel said, holding up the envelope. "That's why you panicked when you saw it earlier. You knew what Daniel had written about the diagnosis because you orchestrated the whole thing." Victoria's perfect composure cracked slightly. "Everything I did for us, Daniel. You needed someone strong enough to match you, to help build your empire. Not some art curator playing at being your equal." "Match me?" Daniel's voice was deadly quiet. "You manipulated me into leaving the woman I loved, made me believe I couldn't have children. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I made you stronger." Victoria's control finally shattered. "Look at everything we've built together. The partnerships, the acquisitions, the power. Rachel would have domesticated you, turned you soft with babies and family dinners. I kept you focused, driven." "Lonely," Daniel interrupted. "Empty. Success means nothing when it's built on lies." Thunder crashed overhead as Victoria's eyes fixed on Rachel's pregnant belly. Understanding dawned in her face, followed by calculation. "The baby. That night in Denver wasn't a coincidence, was it? You orchestrated that meeting, didn't you, Rachel? Played on his emotions, got yourself pregnant to trap him." "Enough!" Daniel's voice cracked like a whip. "You don't get to spin this, Victoria, not anymore." Rachel stepped closer to Victoria, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "You know what's ironic? All those years ago you saw me as a threat because you thought I would trap Daniel with a family. But love isn't a trap, Victoria. It's a choice, one you never trusted him to make for himself." The security monitors suddenly flashed red, displaying urgent weather alerts. The storm had intensified to dangerous levels, and the main road down, the mountain, was now blocked by snowdrifts. Victoria's face hardened as she read the alerts. "So what now? You think you can just erase the last 5 years, play happy families while your empires crumble?" She turned to Daniel. "The board won't look kindly on this scandal. Our Asian expansion, the merger talks, all of it could collapse." "Let it." Daniel moved to stand beside Rachel. "I'm done letting fear of loss drive my decisions." Victoria's hand tightened on her phone. "I still have enough evidence to destroy both of you in the press. Every detail of this sordid reunion, every questionable business decision you've ever made, Daniel. One call to my contact at the Financial Times." The lights went out completely, plunging them into darkness. When the emergency generator kicked, in seconds later Victoria was gone, leaving only the echo of her heels in the corridor. Daniel reached for his phone, but the signal was dead. The storm had knocked out cell service. Through the windows, they could see snow falling with increasing intensity, the wind driving it horizontally across the darkened grounds. "She's desperate," Daniel said grimly, "and desperate people do desperate things," Rachel finished, remembering Victoria's earlier threat about mountain roads. "Daniel, my apartment. I have documents there, proof of her previous threats. We need to—" Another crash of thunder drowned out her words as the lights flickered again. In the momentary darkness, they could hear Victoria's voice carrying from somewhere in the building, sharp and clear as she spoke on the spa's landline. "Yes, I need to arrange immediate helicopter transport. No, I understand the weather concerns. Price is no object." Daniel and Rachel exchanged looks of understanding. Victoria wasn't just running. She was trying to escape before the storm trapped them all together on the mountain. And knowing Victoria, she'd burn every bridge behind her on the way out. The question was, what would she do first? The spa's elegant corridors had transformed into a maze of shadows and emergency lighting. Daniel and Rachel moved quickly through the building, their footsteps echoing on marble floors as they headed toward the staff quarters. Every few seconds, lightning illuminated the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the swirling snow outside into a ghostly dance. "We need to split up," Rachel said, slightly out of breath from their pace. "You try to stop Victoria from reaching the helipad. I'll get the documents from my apartment." Daniel caught her arm gently. "You're not going alone. Not in this weather, not in your condition." A crackle of static interrupted them as the spa's intercom system came to life. Victoria's voice, smooth as silk, filled the corridor. Attention, all guests and staff. Due to severe weather conditions, everyone is required to gather in the main lobby immediately for safety procedures. Rachel's face paled. She's trying to flush us out, or create chaos as cover for her escape. Daniel's business instincts were firing on all cylinders now. The lobby will be packed with confused guests and staff, perfect distraction. They reached a junction where the corridor split, one path leading to the staff quarters, the other toward the main building. Through the windows, they could see the helipad's warning lights blinking weakly through the storm. "Listen to me," Daniel said, his voice urgent. "Victoria's playbook has always been the same. She creates confusion, then strikes where people are most vulnerable. Right now, that's your apartment. Those documents aren't what she's really after." Rachel's hand moved protectively to her belly as understanding dawned. "She wants to destroy any proof of the baby's paternity. The medical records in my apartment." "Exactly." Daniel pulled out his keycard emulator. "Take this. It will open any door in the building. Go to my suite instead. Use the private elevator. Call the police using the landline there. I'll handle Victoria." Rachel gripped his arm. "Daniel, she's dangerous. Not physically, but she has connections. One call from her could destroy everything I've built." He smiled grimly. "Let it burn. None of it matters compared to—" His hand brushed her belly briefly, the gesture full of wonder despite their dire situation. The intercom crackled again. "Security teams to the main entrance and helipad immediately. This is a code blue emergency. She's trying to lock down the building," Daniel muttered. "Go, now!" Rachel started toward the private elevator, then turned back suddenly. Standing on tiptoe, she kissed him, their first kiss in 5 years. It was brief but filled with promise. "Be careful," she whispered. Daniel watched her disappear around the corner before turning toward the main building. He pulled out his phone, hoping the spa's Wi-Fi was still functioning. 1 bar. Enough to send an email. His fingers flew over the screen as he typed a message to his board of directors. "Emergency meeting required. Evidence of corporate espionage and fraud by Victoria Lang. All deals and partnerships under her influence must be frozen immediately. Supporting documentation to follow. This is not a drill. Send." The message went through just as another thunderclap shook the building. Daniel allowed himself a grim smile. Victoria had taught him well about corporate warfare, perhaps too well. He could hear chaos erupting from the lobby. Raised voices, confused questions, the sound of security, radios crackling with instructions. But he knew Victoria wouldn't be there. She'd be heading somewhere quiet, somewhere she could access the building's systems without interruption. The security office. Daniel turned and ran, his footsteps swallowed by the storm's fury. Through the windows, he caught glimpses of the helipad, where the warning lights now seemed to pulse with increasing urgency. The helicopter would be trying to beat the worst of the storm. Victoria would be racing against that same clock. But there was something Victoria didn't know, something even Rachel didn't know yet. The night they'd met in Denver hadn't been chance. Daniel had orchestrated that meeting, hoping to finally tell Rachel the truth about his suspicions regarding Victoria. He'd lost his nerve then, drowning his guilt in wine and shared memories. But fate had given them something unexpected. That night, a child, a future, a second chance. This time he wouldn't let fear stop him from fighting for what mattered. Lightning flashed again, and in that brilliant moment, Daniel saw a figure in a designer coat slipping into the security office at the end of the hall. Victoria might have taught him about corporate warfare, but she'd forgotten one crucial lesson. Never underestimate someone fighting for their family. Rachel stood in Daniel's luxurious suite, her heart pounding as she held the landline receiver. The storm raged outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, transforming the mountain landscape into a whiteout of swirling snow and darkness. She'd already called the police, but the dispatcher's response had been frustrating. The roads were impassable, and it would be hours before they could reach the spa. The suite's sophisticated entertainment system suddenly came to life, screens flickering with security camera feeds. Victoria must have accessed the building's central systems. Rachel watched in horror as multiple views of the spa appeared. Guests huddling in the lobby, security teams rushing through corridors, and there, Daniel approaching the security office where Victoria had barricaded herself. Meanwhile, in that very security office, Victoria's fingers flew over keyboards as she initiated her scorched earth protocol. Years of contingency planning were finally paying off. One by one, emails began flying out to journalists, board members, and regulatory agencies, carefully crafted documents that would cast doubt on every aspect of Daniel's empire. She had always known this day might come, had prepared for it with the same meticulous attention she gave to everything else in her life. But Victoria's hands trembled slightly as she worked. For the first time in her carefully controlled existence, events were spinning beyond her grip. The helicopter pilot had refused to attempt the landing until the storm abated, something about wind shear and visibility minimums. She was trapped, at least temporarily, and that had never been part of her plan. Back in the suite, Rachel's attention was drawn to a particular security feed, the one showing her own apartment. Two men in maintenance uniforms were picking the lock. Victoria's cleanup crew, no doubt, searching for the medical records that could prove the baby's paternity. Rachel smiled grimly. They wouldn't find anything. The important documents were in her go bag, which she'd grabbed on her way to Daniel's suite. The baby kicked vigorously, as if sensing her tension. Rachel rubbed her belly soothingly, remembering the night in Denver that had changed everything. She hadn't known then that Daniel had planned the meeting, but she had sensed something different about him. A vulnerability, a readiness for truth that hadn't been there before. Now, watching him on the security feed, she saw that same determination in his stance. In the security office, Victoria's screen suddenly went dark. Then another and another. A message appeared. System override initiated. Her breath caught as she realized what was happening. Daniel wasn't just approaching the security office. He was using his master access codes to lock her out of the building's systems. Daniel's voice came through the office door. "It's over, Victoria. I've frozen all the accounts, blocked the emails. The board has already been notified." Victoria's laugh was almost hysterical. "You think that's all I have? I've spent years documenting everything, Daniel. Every questionable deal, every tax manipulation, every corporate secret. If I go down, then we all go down," Daniel finished, entering the office. "I'm prepared for that. Are you?" Racing against time in the suite, Rachel had discovered something in Daniel's private safe. Documents that changed everything. Bank transfers showing Victoria's systematic embezzlement from the company dating back years. This wasn't just about personal manipulation, it was about money. Victoria had been stealing millions, hiding it behind the chaos of her corporate machinations. Rachel's hands shook as she photographed the documents with her phone. The baby kicked again, harder this time. She winced, feeling a strange tightening in her abdomen. No, not now, not yet. But her body had other plans. Another contraction gripped her, this one impossible to ignore. Rachel looked at the security feeds. Daniel confronting Victoria, the storm raging outside, help hours away. The baby was coming, weeks early, in the middle of both a natural and emotional storm. She grabbed the phone again, this time dialing the spa's medical office. No answer. Of course. Everyone was in the lobby following Victoria's announcement. Rachel took a deep breath, fighting panic. She was alone, in labor, while the father of her child faced off against a woman capable of destroying them all. Lightning crashed outside, so close it made the windows rattle. In that brilliant flash, Rachel saw something that made her blood run cold. On one of the security feeds, Victoria's maintenance men had given up on her apartment and were now heading toward Daniel's suite. They knew where she was. Another contraction hit, stronger than the last. Rachel looked around the vast suite, her mind racing. She couldn't run, not in this condition. She couldn't fight, not with the baby coming. But she could do what she'd learned to do over the past 5 years: adapt, survive, protect what mattered most. With trembling hands but steady resolve, Rachel began to move furniture against the door. The storm raged, the baby pushed, and somewhere in the building the man she loved faced his own battles. But Rachel Morrison Carter had not come this far to let Victoria Lang write the ending to their story. The security office had become a battleground of silence. Daniel stood in the doorway, his frame blocking Victoria's escape route, while she remained at the computer terminal, her manicured fingers hovering over the keyboard. The storm's fury provided a fitting backdrop to their confrontation, lightning intermittently illuminating their faces through the reinforced windows. "I have one question," Daniel said, his voice controlled despite the anger simmering beneath. "Why the elaborate scheme? Why not just tell me you wanted a partnership from the beginning?" Victoria's laugh was brittle. "Partnership? Oh, Daniel, I didn't want a partnership. I wanted an empire. Your company was merely the foundation." She turned to face him fully. "Rachel made you weak. All those discussions about family, about work-life balance. I saw your potential slipping away. So you destroyed my marriage, manipulated my emotions, and stole millions from my company." Daniel withdrew his phone, displaying the evidence Rachel had just sent him from his suite. "The embezzlement, Victoria, that was your endgame all along." For the first time, genuine fear flickered across Victoria's perfect features. She hadn't known about his private safe, hadn't calculated that Rachel might find those particular documents. Her mind raced, searching for leverage. Meanwhile, in Daniel's suite, Rachel fought through another contraction, her hands braced against the barricaded door. The baby was coming faster than expected, her body responding to the stress and adrenaline. She could hear movement in the corridor outside, Victoria's men searching for her. The furniture wouldn't hold them for long. Through the security feeds still playing on the suite's screens, she watched the confrontation between Daniel and Victoria unfold. But something else caught her attention: movement on the helipad. Despite the dangerous conditions, a helicopter was attempting to land. The pilot must have decided the risk was worth whatever Victoria was paying. Back in the security office, Victoria's composure cracked as she heard the distant sound of helicopter blades. "You want to know the truth, Daniel? I own controlling interests in 3 of your board members' private companies. One call from me, and their votes swing against you. Another call, and your Asian partnerships collapse. I may go down, but I'll take everything you've built with me." "No, you won't." Daniel's voice carried a new authority. "Because Rachel found something else in my safe. Evidence of your involvement in the Jensen merger fraud last year. You remember Jensen, the CEO who committed suicide after the SEC investigation began?" Victoria's face went pale. This was different from corporate manipulation or personal betrayal. This was prison-worthy evidence. A sudden crash from above made them both jump. The helicopter, attempting to land in the treacherous winds, had clipped one of the spa's ornamental towers. Through the windows, they watched in horror as it veered away, struggling to maintain control before disappearing into the storm. In the suite, Rachel heard the crash just as another contraction hit. This one brought her to her knees, a cry of pain escaping her lips. The sound must have carried because the pounding on the door intensified. "Ms. Lang wants those documents," a gruff voice called out. Rachel crawled toward the bathroom, knowing she needed water, towels, anything to prepare for what was coming. The baby wasn't waiting for the storm to pass or help to arrive. Through the security feeds, she could still see Daniel and Victoria, but now their confrontation seemed distant compared to the immediate reality of her situation. Victoria, hearing the helicopter retreat, made her final desperate move. She reached into her designer bag, withdrawing a USB drive. "Kill switch," she said, her voice shaking. "One click, and viruses deploy across your entire corporate network. Everything goes down. Servers, backups, cloud storage. 5 years of planning, Daniel. I was always going to win." But Daniel smiled, the same smile that had won him his first major corporate takeover. "No, Victoria. You lost the moment you underestimated Rachel." He held up his phone again, showing a live feed from his suite. "She's in labor. My child is coming into this world tonight. And nothing, not your schemes, not your threats, not even this storm, matters more than that." The USB drive trembled in Victoria's hand as the full weight of her defeat settled over her. She had planned for every contingency except this one, the possibility that love, real love, was stronger than ambition. Suddenly, the security office door burst open. Mrs. Henderson, the elderly head of staff scheduling, stood there with 2 large security guards. "I heard everything," she said, her kind face unusually stern, "and I've got it all recorded right here." She held up her phone, its red recording light still blinking. Victoria's USB drive clattered to the floor, useless now. But Daniel was already running, his heart pounding with a new urgency. Rachel needed him. Their child was coming. The time for confrontations was over. The storm raged on, but within, its chaos. New life was fighting to begin. The bathroom in Daniel's suite had become Rachel's sanctuary and battlefield. She knelt on plush bath mats, gripping the marble countertop as another contraction tore through her body. Outside the barricaded door, she could hear Victoria's men still trying to break in, but their voices now competed with new sounds, shouts of authority, signs of rescue. Through the haze of pain, Rachel noticed the storm's fury had begun to ebb, as if nature itself was drawing back to make way for what was coming. The first hints of dawn painted the mountain peaks in shades of purple and gold, visible through the bathroom's skylight. "Rachel!" Daniel's voice carried through the suite. "Rachel, I'm here. Security's arrested Victoria's men. Let me in." She wanted to respond, but another contraction gripped her, more powerful than the last. The baby was coming, ready or not. Using the last of her strength, Rachel called out directions for moving the furniture. Meanwhile, in the security office downstairs, Victoria sat under Mrs. Henderson's watchful eye, her perfect posture finally crumbling. The elderly woman's phone still pointed at her, recording every moment, while the security guards secured the USB drive and other evidence. "You know what your real mistake was?" Mrs. Henderson said softly, years of observing spa drama evident in her tone. "You thought power was about control. But real power, it's about what you build, not what you break." Victoria's response was cut short by the arrival of state police officers, who had finally managed to reach the spa through the treacherous mountain roads. As they began reading her rights, Victoria caught a glimpse of herself in the security monitors, disheveled, defeated, and utterly alone. Back in the suite, Daniel finally broke through the barricade, rushing to Rachel's side. The sight of her, powerful, primal, bringing their child into the world, stunned him into momentary silence. Then his training kicked in. "We need medical help," he said, reaching for his phone. "No time," Rachel gasped between contractions. "This baby isn't waiting for anyone." Daniel knelt behind her, providing support as she had once supported him through countless business crises. "Then we do this together, like we should have been doing everything all along." The spa's doctor and a nurse, finally freed from the lobby chaos, arrived with emergency supplies. But it was Daniel who held Rachel's hands, Daniel who whispered encouragement, Daniel who watched in awe as Rachel's strength proved greater than any corporate power play he'd ever witnessed. "I see the head," the doctor announced. "One more push, Rachel." Rachel gathered her remaining strength, squeezing Daniel's hands. In that moment, all the years of separation, all the pain of betrayal, all Victoria's machinations seemed to dissolve. There was only this, the miracle of creation, the power of love over ambition, the triumph of truth over manipulation. With a final, mighty effort, Rachel brought their child into the world. The baby's first cry echoed through the suite just as the sun broke fully over the mountains, flooding the room with golden light. "A girl," the doctor announced, placing the squirming bundle on Rachel's chest. Perfect and healthy despite being a few weeks early. Daniel's hand trembled as he touched his daughter's tiny fingers. "She's beautiful," he whispered, "like her mother." Rachel looked up at him, tears mixing with triumph on her face. "She has your eyes." Through the suite's windows, they could see police vehicles arriving, their lights flashing against the snow-covered grounds. Victoria was being led out in handcuffs, her designer coat draped over her restraints like a final attempt at dignity. But neither Rachel nor Daniel paid her any attention. Their world had narrowed to this moment, this miracle, this new beginning. Mrs. Henderson appeared in the doorway, her phone still recording. "For evidence," she said with a wink, but her eyes were soft as she watched the new family. "And maybe for the baby's photo album years from now, when she asks about the night she was born during the biggest storm in spa history." The morning light strengthened, transforming the aftermath of the storm into a glittering wonderland. Inside, Rachel and Daniel marveled at their daughter, both recognizing that some storms don't destroy. They clear the air, wash away the past, and make room for new growth. "What should we name her?" Daniel asked softly. Rachel smiled, remembering the dawn light that had heralded their daughter's arrival. "Aurora," she said. "It means dawn." "Aurora," Daniel repeated, tasting the name. "Perfect for a new beginning." 1 year later, the ethereal summit spa looked exactly the same majestic mountains, the same elegant architecture, the same promise of luxury and escape. But for the group gathered in the private garden terrace, everything had changed. Rachel stood by the stone railing, watching Aurora toddle between the flower beds on unsteady legs. The little girl's dark curls bounced with each determined step, her father's eyes bright with curiosity as she explored her surroundings. Daniel hovered nearby, his formerly perfect business attire slightly rumpled from catching their daughter's frequent stumbles. "She's fearless," Mrs. Henderson observed, joining Rachel at the railing. The elderly woman had become something of a grandmother figure to Aurora, her weekly video calls filled with stories and songs. Just like her mother. Rachel smiled, touching the simple gold band on her finger. She and Daniel had married 6 months ago, a small, intimate ceremony, in this very garden. No society photographers, no corporate allies, just love and truth and second chances. "The board meeting went well?" she asked as Daniel scooped up their giggling daughter and joined them. He nodded, shifting Aurora to his hip. "The Asian partnerships are stronger than ever. Turns out, when you base business relationships on honesty instead of manipulation, people trust you more." His free hand found Rachel's, squeezing gently. "The art therapy program for the spa is approved, by the way. The board loves the idea of combining wellness with creative expression." Rachel's eyes lit up. She had found her way back to art, but differently now, using it as therapy, helping others heal through creativity. The spa's new program would be her first major project, combining her past expertise with her new understanding of healing and renewal. "Have you heard the news?" Mrs. Henderson asked, her eyes twinkling. "Victoria's appeal was denied. She'll serve the full sentence." They all turned to look at the morning paper Mrs. Henderson held, where a small article announced, Victoria Lang's failed attempt to overturn her conviction for corporate fraud and embezzlement. The woman, who had once commanded boardrooms and manipulated lives, was now teaching business classes to fellow inmates. A different kind of power, perhaps a more honest one. "I received a letter from her," Daniel said quietly. "She wanted to apologize, or at least her therapist wanted her to. I haven't opened it yet." Rachel touched his arm. "You don't have to." "I know, but maybe someday, when it doesn't matter anymore." Aurora chose that moment to reach for one of the flowering vines, climbing the garden trellis, nearly launching herself from Daniel's arms. They all laughed as he steadied her, the sound carrying across the morning air. "Speaking of news," Rachel said, meeting Daniel's eyes with a smile, "I had my doctor's appointment yesterday." Daniel's breath caught as understanding dawned. "You mean due in winter?" Rachel confirmed, her free hand resting on her still flat stomach. "Aurora's going to be a big sister." Mrs. Henderson clapped in delight while Daniel pulled Rachel close, careful of their squirming daughter between them. Aurora patted Rachel's cheek, babbling happily in her own language. "I had the marketing team remove all the old spa brochures," Mrs. Henderson said. "The ones with Victoria's wellness programs. We're reprinting them with the new art therapy offerings." She paused, smiling at the family before her. "Though I did keep one video of a certain stormy night. For Aurora's birthday, when she's older." "Our own family legend," Daniel mused, watching his daughter reach for another flower, though maybe with fewer corporate intrigue details until she's much older. Rachel leaned into his embrace, feeling the mountain breeze play with her hair. "We'll tell her the important parts about truth and courage and how love can weather any storm." A comfortable silence fell over the group as they watched the sun climb higher over the mountains. The same peaks that had witnessed their darkest moments now stood guard over their happiness. In the garden below, the rosebush they had planted on their wedding day was flourishing, its blooms a testament to what could grow from new beginnings. "Time for Aurora's morning nap," Rachel said eventually, noticing their daughter's drooping eyes. As they walked back into the spa, Daniel paused in the exact spot where he had stood a year ago, looking out at the mountains with such emptiness in his heart. Now he held his family close, understanding finally that true success wasn't measured in corporate acquisitions or power plays, but in moments like these, real, imperfect, and infinitely precious. "Welcome home," Rachel whispered, reading his thoughts. Daniel kissed her softly, their daughter drowsy between them, their unborn child a promise of more love to come. Outside, the mountains stood eternal, but within these walls, something even more enduring had taken root, the simple, unshakable truth that some storms don't destroy us, they make us whole. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Give it a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.